afternoon. My name is Stéphane Floch. I am Technical Service Veterinarian at Vetoquinol, France. I am delighted to welcome you here, but also online, as we are broadcasting live as a webinar. Today we will be discussing new challenges in the treatment of clinical mastitis, non-severe clinical mastitis. First, let me introduce Professor Paolo Moroni. Paolo is doctor in veterinary medicine. He is now full professor at the University of Milano. He is also a diplomate of ECBHM and has worked at Cornell University until 2023. So, Paolo, how and shall we change our management of clinical mastitis?
Good morning or good afternoon or good lunch to everybody. Thank you so much for Vetoquinol for the invitation. And today we will try to address what we call hot topics about reduction of antibiotic. I know we are in Europe, and doesn't mean European community, but doesn't mean also a lot of different approach from each country. What we need for the future of the cow, I think there is a lot of discussion of select dry cow therapy, and Netherlands already started 15 years ago, and they got incredible result. And what we would like from the field, a little bit more data analysis from the DHI or somatic cell control, but also a possibility to interpret it and a possibility to elaborate this data just to provide practical approach to the farmer or to the vet. And then in the meantime, there is a lot of discussion about in which way we'll be able to support farmer or vet with on-farm culture, with PCR, and don't forget training people. I know we need to move in an automatic milking system, but people are still the most important thing in our farm. And then the vaccine, the automatic milking system, and also we need to take in consideration, probably we need to have a little bit more data about homeopathic and non-conventional product, because there is a huge broad spectrum of product that we really don't know what's going on. What about mastitis? I will retire in 12 years, so if we look this scenario, I have enough time to spend in a farm and try to fix or try to understand a little bit the problem. But also if we are really focused on management and if we are really focused on bacterial culture, this is a trend for the next 6 years, so there is a lot of possibility to improve. There is a lot of possibility also to do better from the mastitis market side. And what about the guideline? I think this was the first big change in Europe when in 2015, the European community, I think, provide really important message. The most important message was for the first time was we need to work together. Vet, farmer, people who are the government, official lab, and everybody try to fix and try to understand what is the real problem. And then was about in which way we'll be able to reduce the use of the antibiotic, or better, in which way we'll be used to optimize the antibiotics. And I think there are a couple of important sentences already used in Europe. One was to move the blank therapy to the select dry cow therapy, and the majority of the country in Europe already move in this direction. And the other was promoting a little bit more better diagnostic, better identification of bacterial culture when we speak about mastitis, but also don't forget the diagnostic for calf. But every time that we try to reduce, every time that we try to optimize something, there is a sort of concern from for the farmer, from the people that work in the farm, but also from the vet association. Because every time that we would like to change something is a sort of big drama. And this is really something that, if you think about Teolam group, they already start about communication, in which way we'll be able to communicate, in which way we'll be able to work together. And I think one of the most important messages from this paper was we need to work together with the farmer, and the vet need to take in consideration and the leadership, what's going on in the farm. I think the time that we used to work only for reproduction or surgery is a little bit on the end, and I think the role of the vet is more in data analysis or elaborate data or result coming from the government lab or private lab, but private lab, they have experience in what we do, especially now that we speak about mastitis, and interpret the data and suggest practical support to the farmer. And this is a sort of strategy that we need to take in care, and I think for the first time also the vet or the category need to think in a different way. It's not only a question to touch the animal, but it's also a question to understand what's going on and which data we will be able and support for strategy in the farm. Don't forget the market. A lot of input, a lot of regulation, a lot of law coming also between a mix from what the consumer want and also the legislator want and also the veterinarian and the farmer they would like. So don't forget about there is a lot of demand of high quality milk, and now we know it's somatic cell count is part of the package, fat and protein, but now we speak about casein and other products, so we need to produce high level of milk quality. And then also veterinary care and diagnostic, it's really important, because if we would like to reduce the use of the antibiotic, we need to have a proof of what's going on, which kind of bacteria we can find in clinical mastitis, subclinical mastitis, but also in a bull tank. So diagnostic, it's really important. Then we can address, if we move to the standard diagnostic, MALDI-TOF, or a lot of discussion about the whole genome sequence. But I think, remember, don't forget that we work with the farmer, the 24-hour hours in the milking parlor, or the manager or the milker. So sometimes we need to keep low profile, a really important message, but really very easy to interpret it for the farmer point of view. And then there is also, don't forget, the ethical and farm methodology, animal welfare. And the other is in which way we'll be able to reduce the antibiotic. Why we need to use antibiotic in moderate or not severe case. And this is part of the discussion, and this is part of what we did at Cornell when we started with the Interschuken and when we moved to Europe. But what we treat, which kind of suggestion we are able to provide to our client, and what the research already published. I think there is no doubt now when we speak about clinical mastitis, the most important things are environmental. So in Europe, I think in the majority of Europe, we struggle with strep uberis, but also in some countries with E. coli. But don't forget that when we send out to the lab the clinical mastitis, between 30–45% of clinical cases are negative. And not because the lab doesn't work really very well, but because this is a sort of physiological trend. So take in consideration this kind of number when we provide sample to the farmer. So it could be nice to collect X number of samples and then send to the lab. And then when we move to the etiology, this Pam Rueg summary about veterinary book, I think what they found and what they show was a lot of presence of what we call NAS, non-aureus staphylococci, the ex-coagulase negative, in a different country from New Zealand, Germany, and US, and this was more or less the same trend, and also the majority after CNS was strep that we found in a clinical case. But the other important message coming from Pam Rueg, and it's a little bit completely different what we got in the last 15 years. So the message in the last 15 years was we need to treat any kind of mastitis because for the welfare point of view, we need to reduce the pain, we need to treat, we need to, as much as possible, provide the increase of the milk production in the cow. And now after 25 years, and with all the meta-analysis and all with the experience, Pam Rueg came with this paper, and she showed that between 80 and 68% of the clinical case, they didn't have any kind of benefit to be treated, so to use the antibiotic. And the only 20% and 30% was supposed to use the antibiotic. So if you're thinking about cost, if you're thinking about labor, if you're thinking also about the potential of antibiotic resistance, this is a really important message that we need to follow and we need to start to thinking about. So NMC, historical, they say that the practitioner, they generally support, especially in a large farm, the possibility to do on-farm culture, but also we need to think about the rest of 80%, 70% of the farming, in which way we'll be able to collect or have an idea what's going on with the clinical mastitis. So we can implement the possibility of the lab to collect sample, we can have a courier, we can have other possibility, we can ship sample from one place to the other. But in the end, we need to training people. We can also move in online or on-farm culture, but we need to training people. People need to have a sort of background. People need to have a course or training in official lab so they can really able to have a standardized operation in the farm. Where we can run culture, and these are a sort of different situation. We can run culture in the farm, big farm, small farm, and this was Cornell University. We can also run lab to, Cornell University. I know very well GD Institute. So there are really important lab where we can collect sample and they have enough experience. But generally, also university, but generally we are not able to cover 100% of the land or 100% of the farmers, and this is what we need to take in consideration. Who can run culture? Sure, technicians with 25 years experience are the best. Now we move 10 years, 15 years ago in a multi-direction. We can select one colony and then we can identify everything, but also we can keep what we call low profile. We can training farmer and we can do a sort of magic tool that we can incubate for 24-hour plate and give a result. It's not probably the best solution, but it's a compromise and it's something that maybe we need to take in consideration for the future. What we can find on the market is just what I got from official paper. So there is an incredible list of commercial, a couple of old, but there is everything on the market, and I think we need to think about the sensitivity, specificity, and also the labor input and the cost, and also if we think about Mastatest, the possibility to provide also MIC after the identification of the bacteria. So there is tool, there is a possibility, and it's more up to us in which way we want to run and which kind of test is the best for this farmer or the other farmer. This is Volker Kronken, friend of my treatment decision. So and this is more or less what we start, what Interschuken started at Cornell and what we define with a lot of data about we need to treat strep or CNS. We don't need to treat moderate or not severe E. coli or gram-negative mastitis. So you can see everything is on the base of the rapid test result. And generally what the feedback that we have from the farm is we would like as much as possible or as soon as possible result 4 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours. So depend what are the priority. Generally, I don't know, in US, they treat once a day. In Europe is a little bit different. So also the time around for the result, it's really important. On the best base of mastitis treat, I think these are the most important, or what I think is the most important paper, or what they sign something in the diagnostic and in the routine, but the most important thing is the antibiotic reduction. And Alfonso Lago was able to show that they have a reduction of around 50%, and the other 65, 38, 74. So it's a lot of amount of antibiotic that on the base of the decision tree, we don't need to use. So, and this is something that we need to take in consideration just for the ethical point of view, but also for the consumer, because we don't need to forget the consumer. They want happy cow, they want less use of the antibiotic, and these are the direction that we need to follow. Paper coming from Cornell University, Daryl Knight and our group, and Amy Vasquez, they came with this, and after a lot of discussion, we came with this kind of question. Can I selectively use a less expensive antibiotic with a short label duration of treatment instead of using a more expensive antibiotic in all clinical cases for a typical duration of 5 days? So does it mean, can I wait in 24 hours, I get results from the lab on the bacterial species and waiting for treat, or I need to treat for 5 days, what we standardize in the US? And the question was what happened if I treat for 5 days or if I wait in 24 hours, what's happened to the length of the clinical mastitis sign? And between the two groups was no difference. And the other question was, what about somatic cell count? There is a big change between linear score if we were waiting 1 day or if we treat for 5 days. There also was no significant difference between the two groups. And also the most important thing for the farmer, what about milk production? If I will be able to waiting, there is a big difference between one group and the control group, no difference. And also the risk of culling rate or sold or died animal, also no different, big difference. So in the end, the message, the question was no, we can waiting, we can have, we really need to have a bacteriology. We need to have an idea, and then on the basis of the idea, we will be able to treat or not treat the animal on the basis of the culture result. But the most important thing is US is money, but the most important thing is with this kind of approach, the big dairy farm was more than 1,000 lactating cow, was able to reduce 67% of the antibiotic, and then more than $30,000 of profit. But I think the most important message of this slide, with this kind of approach, with the possibility to get results in 24 hours, we were able to reduce 67% of the use of the antibiotic. Same experience, small experience, different size. In Italy, the colleague Mima Rigoni from Government Lab in Piacenza, they use severe, moderate, and acute mastitis, three definition. Sometimes it's not easy to identify this kind of identification in the farm, but what they did, and they culture all clinical mastitis, negative sample or as usually the main sample, and then they found strep, uberis, and also NAS from coagulase negative. But the most important thing is they decided to treat only coagulase negative or NAS and strep, and these are the results. The numbers are low if you compare with the other study, but it's just an indication. It's just was an internal project just to support in Parmigiano-Reggiano area the reduction of antibiotic, and you see in different farms the reduction coming from maximum 71% and the lowest was 44. And when we speak about increase of cash flow, we have an increase between 3,000 and 14,000, and then for cow, lactating cow, was between 20 euros and 100 euros. I would like to spend a couple of sentences about money are important, but in this direction, I think it's more important to show the number of the percentage of reduction of antibiotic, because I think it's really important message for everybody in One Health definition or in One Health program. And coming to the conclusion, I think there are a couple of important messages in this really short presentation, but we need to change the treatment behavior, and we will take longer. It's not so easy because for 20 years we suggest blank therapy, and now we need to move in a different direction, and what we said is completely different than what we said in the last 20 years. Farmer will not allow to fully adhere to treatment concept, but this is something that we need to work. The veterinarian need to work with the farmer. We need to grow together. We need to thinking what is the best for our son, for new generation, and for the market. And then I think this is a part of continuing education, is part of my job, or part of people who try to do research or work in university, but also in a government lab. Continuing education is really important. And training of the farmer or training of the people, they can run on-farm culture, but they need to have a specific guideline. They need to have a specific people that have experience to provide information as a sort of follow-up or ring test. And then reduction of antibiotic usage, I don't think is anymore is a mandatory. I think is ethical. I think it could be part of our job day to day. And we will see, we have already a lot of data from the Netherlands country, and I think, I speak about Italy, we were able to reduce 30%, and now we need to continue to decrease year by year, step by step, but these are the direction. As everything is in a diagnostic, everything is in the veterinary, every treatment, every suggestion, we need to have a monitoring of what's going on in the farm and what we suggest, and a close cooperation between farmer, vet, group of vet, but also breeding association, university, and government lab, I think could be a sort of win-win situation for the milk quality and for the best product that we can put on the market. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paolo. Great talk. Now we will have Francisco Malcata, who is also DVM and diplomate of ECBHM. He's currently medical manager for other health at Vetoquinol. So, Francisco, how can we go smarter in Mastatest management?
Thank you, Stefan, for this kind introduction. So I will share with you how can innovation support smarter other health management in dairy cows with a focus in antimicrobial reduction, as well maintaining welfare and as well productivity in our dairy farms. So a bit of context. There is today societal pressure from regulation bodies to reduce antimicrobial usage with an increased concern from public health because antimicrobial usage is associated, or there are links with the development of resistant bacteria, multi-resistant to antibiotics. And as we all know, mastitis uses a lot, or the treatment and management of mastitis uses a lot of antibiotics, around 70%. And in the past, we were using it as a blanket treatment, and now we are shifting to different approach, like selective treatment during lactation for clinical mastitis cases, but as well at the moment of dry off. And regarding, to selective treatment of clinical mastitis, the main principle is to identify and use antibiotics only for cases that will benefit from treatment, and in contrast, withholding antibiotics from cases that have high probability of spontaneous clearance, and as well withhold antibiotics from cases caused by pathogens that the antibiotics will not work. Mycoplasma and Prototica, for example. And so, seeing this context, what do we need to implement selective treatment of clinical mastitis? First, farmers need to be able to differentiate each case of clinical mastitis regarding severe, differentiate mild, moderate, and severe cases. And after, mainly, we need to be able to identify the presence of gram-positive organisms. So a test that, point-of-care test to perform on farm or in clinics that will be able to identify these pathogens, discriminate contamination from intramammary infection, would help us to implement this selective treatment of clinical mastitis. a test that will be able to identify species or some at species level also may influence treatment decisions because not all the pathogens are the same. The approach to treatment is not the same for all the pathogens. For example, strep versus staphylococcus, or staphylococcus aureus versus non-aureus staphylococcus, or Klebsiella versus E. coli, all need to be approached differently. And penicillin susceptibility testing in a point-of-care test will be important to differentiate if a germ is resistant, particularly for Staphylococcus aureus, because the prognosis will change. So there is no point to use antibiotics in germs that will not have good prognosis. And a test that also can differentiate contamination from mixed culture and versus poor culture is important when you are assessing susceptibility testing. So regarding all these needs, Vetoquinol with Mastatest, they develop an innovative tool called Mastatest that is easy to use, is automated data processing tool, has automated interpretation, so it doesn't require a lot of training, and the results can be available by mail to the farmer and to the vet. This test takes seconds to perform. As I said before, no training is needed, no language barrier. It's easy to perform. You just need to collect an aseptical mixed sample, put it in a cartridge, and incubate the cartridge in the machine, and just introduce the details about cow identification and wait for the results with a turnaround that normally are less than 24 hours, depending on the bacteria. And what other features this test can also give us? The results are available in a shared access, automated data capture, allow us to review cow history, as well review herd trends. These are very important in when we want to implement herd health management procedures adapted to the needs of the farm and to the farm. And this tool can differentiate, can identify when no culture is present, okay, absence of culture, identifies, discriminate gram-negative that are, as I said before, the treatment is different, or the treatment approach, E. coli versus Klebsiella, for example, all the streps and staph and Staphylococcus aureus, and as well we can identify when the sample is contaminated when we use this test, because if we perform or if we give a treatment in a contaminated sample, in a cow that we have a contaminated sample, probably we are using an antibiotic that probably was not needed. So, in regarding susceptibility testing, antibiotic sensitivity in this tool is reported for a pure culture only, and 3 informations are provided: antibiotic ranking based on MIC values. MIC values are also given, and based on breakpoints, we can discriminate between susceptible to a treatment and resistant to a treatment pathogen. Okay, what other features this test can also give us? Regarding antibiotic usage, is also allows us to benchmark antibiotics, creating rankings, which antibiotic is most adapted, is suitable to a certain pathogen in different colors, as you can see. Red normally have low chance of cure, blue possible chance of cure, and green high chance of cure. And this is a way to adapt treatment and to the pathogen and increase the cure rates. As well, another strategy to reduce antimicrobial usage. And here we have results from all our clients. So since our launch, more than almost 47,000 clinical mastitis samples were analyzed by our machines. And the results show that in 11% of the cases, no bacteria was detected. So there is no need to use antibiotics. And if we say as well, E. coli cases, so this showing that around almost 30% of the cases, we don't need to use antibiotics, which is according to the needs of the regulatory bodies and according to what is expected for today in our farms to reduce antimicrobials and adapting it to the situations that are needed. The other graph I already explained, and this is another way to show how a treatment is, the probability to treat an animal according to a molecule is adapted or not. Okay, another feature that this tool also gives us is it's possible to benchmark your clients when you have, can I say, you have all your epidemiology of all your clients, and you can compare to a specific client, and you can see how this is different from the others, and after as well adapt management approaches tailored to a specific farm. Okay? And just to recap, how can we increase the likelihood of the right treatment decision being made on farm? We need to perform on-farm culture on every clinical mastitis case, whose bacterial result has a treatment decision. We can use the benchmark of MIC values to select the most suitable antibiotic. And with all this data that is collected and shared, we can assess and implement herd health programs adapted to the needs. But to conclude, it's very important as well, prevention, we cannot forget, it's the best way to reduce mastitis. But this tool, gathering all this data, allow us to implement preventive approaches adapted to the needs of each farm.
Please take a seat with us. Now we will start the question and answer session. So the first question will be maybe for you, Paolo. What barriers do you see to adopting selective treatment and implementing Mastatest or any other diagnostic tools?
Which barrier?
Like farmers' expectations, regulatory constraints, concern about relapses?
I think so. One of the most important things when we decided to move to the cell-dry cow therapy was what's going on with the new infection and clinical mastitis after. And it's true. If you think about reduction of antibiotic, but we will not change management, it could be a really big problem. So it's not only question, is it mandatory to reduce the antibiotic? I would like to put in a law, in a sentence, it's also mandatory to change mentality. Because we cannot continue to management the dry off with overcrowd, this is a physiological 20-30%, a lot of more cow, and then thinking about don't use the antibiotic and get the same result. So this is one of probably the most important message that we need to provide. About the use of the test, I would like to say it's really the direction that we need to follow, because why we need to use this kind of antibiotic, but the people, they need to have a training, because from all the system you get a lot of information, but then in the end is the vet that need to take a decision, treat or not treat, or is the vet that need to do a flow chart. I treat this kind of bacteria and I don't treat the other. And I speak about Italy, we need improve people that have skill of milk. because we used to get money from reproduction and surgery. Really few people move in a milk direction. And remember, in Italy, we don't sell antibiotics, so this is another big difference. And this is why probably the people, they never went in the detail about milk quality.
Thank you, Paolo. Another question for Francisco, maybe. How does your relationship with the farmer influence the uptake of such treatment decisions?
Yeah, I think in every step that we take, confidence is very important. So if you have a good relationship and he trusts what you are trying to transmit or teach them, are very important, especially when you are trying to change mindset or behaviors. People need to build confidence before trying a new approach. So I believe that relationship and the links that you establish with your clients are the basics and are the key for the success of target selective treatment.
Yes, thank you. So one for Paolo. So waiting 24 hours for pathogen identification before treatment does not have an impact on the parameters you showed, but is there an impact on the next lactation mastitis prevalence?
We didn't, or they didn't check this, but I don't think so, because generally when we speak about clinical mastitis, we speak about between 0 and 90, 0 120 day milking. If we will be able to treat or have a diagnosis in this, then we have another 100 day. So I don't think there is a really big problem from the next lactation. But this is something that we have in pipeline, because we collect this information. I don't know if we'll be able to publish, but we have probably in 6 months an answer also for this.
Okay, thank you. Maybe another one for Paolo, sorry. What external pressures or incentives might impact the adoption of selective treatment?
Yeah, I come from US, money is everything, correct? But we need to think about money are important, and this is why, for example, I speak about Parmigiano Reggiano. They get an incentive to reduce the antibiotic, they get money, and I think also the cheese plant, they need to put extra money for the reduction of antibiotic, because it's more effort, it's more time, it's more management, it's more straw, if you use straw, or more sand or sawdust if you use. So I think, I understand it's a mandatory, but mandatory doesn't mean extra labor for the farmer. They cannot complain now for the price of the milk, but in the future they start again to cry. But this is something that you need to take in consideration. When we ask something, especially in the milk quality and improved milk quality, I think is an opportunity, is a due or mandatory to give extra cent to the farmer.
Yeah, thank you.
I think it's your turn now.
Yeah. But I'm not sure we have the answer, but let's start. How many samples with more than one species identified in the European study or European report, I would say? I'm not sure we have that.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't have that answer, but can you repeat again?
Well, in the European numbers that you showed, European report with a lot of samples.
Yeah. We did 49,000 clinical mastitis milk samples and analysis, and the results are, as I said before, around 30% of the cases we don't need to treat. We can argue that the 11% that were culture negative is a low number of what we would expect. We would expect probably a lot more, but maybe the way we collect milk samples might need to be reassessed. We could discuss this. Could be that probably some of the culture positive samples could be from not a very good technique of collecting a milk sample.
Or maybe
What
not
do
only
you think?
clinical, maybe also
Yeah.
clinical.
Yeah. It depends also on the cases that were collected, because maybe it was relapses, subclinical mastitis, etc. Not only first case of clinical mastitis, non-severe clinical mastitis. But we don't have the number in mind to answer this question. I believe that we have answered all the questions. It is time for us now to close the symposium. Again, thank you very much for your presence here and your presence online. I hope you enjoyed the talks, and I hope we'll see you in a further symposium or webinars. Thank you very much.